Hey folks, this is Kalani. Welcome back to the Blackrock Foundry raid guide for normal and heroic. This time we'll be looking at the Iron Maidens.
Sisters, to battle!
So you'll be fighting 3 bosses at once essentially, and they all have different abilities, so you'll need to position yourself accordingly. All 3 bosses have a resource called Fury. This starts at 0 and gradually gets up to 100 throughout the fight. It takes about 10 minutes to get to 100 by itself, but whenever one of the bosses gets to 20%, all 3 will go to 100 Fury instantly. Fury is important because they start using new abilities at 30 Fury and 100 Fury. I'd recommend tanking all 3 together in a corner. This allows for easy positioning for some abilities and then also allows people to cleave. You want MARAK the Blooded to be tanked slightly to one side, and no melee should ever be between the tank who's tanking her and MARAK. Let's start with Admiral Garan. Now her basic ability is Iron Shot. She'll shoot people randomly, basically, and she cannot be tanked. Taunting her does seem to encourage her to move for positioning, but that's about it. The other ability she starts with is Rapid Fire. She'll track a player and start firing artillery in that direction. So this player wants to move out to the side as quickly as possible and then kite it around. Preferably everyone else should stay out of the way as well. When she gets to 30 Fury, she'll start casting Penetrating Shot. She'll line up a shot at a random player and everybody needs to get within that line to help spread the damage. That's pretty basic stack ability, but it gets a little complicated with some other abilities later on. Next up is Enforcer Soccer. Her melee hits pretty hard, so she needs to be tanked. Her basic ability is Blade Dash, where she'll dash through a player within 45 yards, dealing damage to everybody within 8 yards of them. Essentially, it's quite a decent chunk of damage, so you need to spread out somewhat loosely. Now at 30 Iron Fury, she'll gain Convulsive Shadows. This is a magic damage debuff, which does damage over time. It starts doing a lot of damage, and then starts doing less damage as it reduces in stacks. Don't dispel this. If you dispel this, you're probably going to kill the player who has it, or deal a lot of unnecessary damage. Last but not least is MARAK the Blooded. Now she also needs to be tanked, but there's something a little special about this. Her basic ability is Blood Ritual. She'll target a random player and after a short duration deal a huge amount of damage to anybody within a cone in front of MARAK towards that player. Now the strange thing about this is that it deals 3 times that damage to the first target it hits, so that needs to be soaked by the tank who is tanking MARAK. This should only ever damage 2 players, the tank who's tanking MARAK and the player who has Blood Ritual. They want to get into position behind the tank, and this should be set up beforehand. At 30 Fury, MARAK will gain Blood-Soaked HEARTSEEKER. She'll mark 3 targets and throw an axe which bounces between them. It deals a huge amount of damage, but it's reduced by the distance the axe has to travel between the targets. They simply need to spread out throughout the room. As you progress through the fight, you're going to have to deal with the Dreadnought. The lowest health boss, when this activates, is going to jump off the platform where you usually fight and man the Dreadnought. Then they'll fire volleys of bombs down onto your raid, warming up to one-shot everybody. Now the only way to stop that is to take a small crew of players over to the Dreadnought yourself. Some hooks will present themselves and you can send up to 6 players. You'll be faced with a different challenge before you can stop the Dreadnought, depending on which boss is sent up. If Admiral goes onto the ship, you'll need to deal with Uktar and Rog. You'll need to kill Uktar and interrupt Rog because Rog starts placing shields on Uktar, and Uktar's the one you need to kill to stop the Dreadnought. He also has a Grape Shot ability, which does a cone attack, so simply spread out. You need to send 1 healer and 5 DPS. Make sure people are interrupting Rog on a rotation so he doesn't get any of his casts off. When you've defeated Uktar, you can blow up the ammunition supply and stop the Dreadnought. If Soccer goes onto the ship, you'll have to deal with Gorak and his Iron Eviscerators. Gorak is the one you need to kill, but the Iron Eviscerators will fixate anyone you send up and won't change off that target. The best way we dealt with this was to have everybody stack up and cleave down the Iron Eviscerators, but Gorak has Deadly Throw. This ability is really painful, especially if someone with Fixate gets it on them. The tank wants to try and put themselves between the target, so they take the hit. Defeat Gorak and you can happily blow up that ammunition supply. For this boat you'll need 1 tank, 1 healer and 4 DPS. If MARAK goes up, you'll have to deal with Ukarog. Now this is probably one of the hardest ones, and once again you'll need 1 tank, 1 healer and 4 DPS. This is hard simply because periodically everybody on the boat will drop a pool of corrupted blood which deals a large amount of damage whenever you stand inside it. To do this, you'll need to line up your tanks and melee so they can all move together without stepping on each other's blood puddles. The healer needs to make sure their blood puddles aren't in the way of the melee, and any ranged you take are pretty safe. You'll only get 1 of each boat, and it's dictated by the lowest health boss. So if 1 goes up, the lowest health of the remaining 2 will then go up next, and the last one is always going to be the last one who has not yet got onto the boat. As for the rest of the raid, while these boats are happening, they'll have to deal with the volleys of bombs I mentioned earlier. These are actually incredibly simple to deal with. You'll get 2 volleys. 1 volley will bring forth a small amount of bombs, and then the next will cover the rest of the room. But the bombs aren't that dangerous when they have been placed and not yet exploding. So what you want to do for this is move out of the first barrage, step on one of the bombs from the first barrage, step out of the first bombs from the first barrage because they're about to explode, and then when the second set is going to explode, where that first bomb was, that's going to be a safe spot. So out, in, done. That's going to repeat quite a bit throughout the fight, so you better get used to it. You should also practice staying close together because all of the abilities that the bosses have are still going to be cast. So if you get a penetrating shot during bombs and you're way out of the way, you're gonna die, which is obviously a problem. So try stay stacked up somewhat and keep everybody safe. When one of the bosses gets to 20%, all of them will basically go crazy, so you want to get all of them as close to 20% as possible before you push one of them down to that mark. All 3 of them will gain new abilities, which makes this last 20% the hardest part of the fight. You'll want to save Bloodlust for this section. The Admiral will start deploying turrets around the room, and they start spamming fireballs all over the place. You cannot get hit by these. These are a huge damage over time effect, and too many people getting hit by this will instantly wipe your raid. But the turret can be destroyed, so when the turret comes up, all of your ranged need to swap to it immediately, and I'd recommend killing the Admiral first. MARAK will start using Sanguine strikes, which doesn't really do anything except split some damage from the tank to everybody in the raid. It starts causing consistent raid-wide damage, which isn't a great deal to worry about until your healers start to struggle. For this, I'd recommend killing her second. Sorka will start using Dark Hunt. She'll fix her gaze on a random player for 8 seconds, and at the end of it she'll teleport to them, dealing a massive amount of damage. They simply need to be healed up, make sure they're topped off, or they need to use a cooldown themselves. So that should be enough to take down the Iron Maidens on Normal and Heroic. If you have any questions or queries, please leave them in the comment section below and I'll try to get back to you. Feel free to check out any of my other guides for Blackrock Foundry, Normal and Heroic. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always, I will see you next time.